Hi, I'm really excited to bring this Christ Revealed interview to you. Let's go ahead and jump in. So this is, I'm startled here, pleasantly startled. So you go from having a interaction with a group of atheists to now preaching in a mosque. Can you give us a little more detail on that experience, what that was like to walk in there and do this?
Well, this was a unique experience. I was working with a group in the inner city in Philadelphia, and we were taking students out to have conversations with people in the city,
Right.
just with very different beliefs. And I knew I was taking a group of students into a mosque. And in the morning, when we were debriefing to get ready, the fellow on our side who's leading it, he says, and you'll be preaching for 15 minutes in a mosque, sharing the Christian view of salvation. I said, okay, time out. I didn't get that memo. Like, I'm happy to do it. That's awesome. But I need to know, like, what are they expecting? How long do I have? What do you mean present the Christian view of salvation? So I prepared that day. I went in and I was asked to give there's probably 150 of our students, maybe 150 Muslims from the mosque in an open room, and they had food in the back. And I was allowed to present the Christian view of salvation 15 minutes. The imam presented the Muslim view of salvation 15 minutes. And then we sat there and took questions back and forth. And I'll tell you, this imam was so gracious. He was kind, he was warm, so hospitable. We differed, so he didn't pretend we didn't differ, but I walked away. I mean, our students loved it.
Right.
And I walked away going, wow, man, I think a lot of people, not everybody, there's some people out there that wouldn't, but there's a lot of people, if you just step outside of your comfort zone, treat them the way you'd want to be treated, would be willing to have spiritual conversations. And the best part is I realized some of our students had faulty views about Islam.
Right.
And based on many of their questions, I realized so many of them didn't even understand the gospel.
Wow.
They didn't get it. They had a straw man view of it. Now, I haven't heard that any of them became Christians, but at least they understand more clearly
Right.
who Jesus claimed to be, what it means to be a Christian. And I think they felt loved by Christians.
If you watch the news and world political events, you would think that that was what you just described is a impossibility, and that there is no way for there to be conversation, communication, a shared spiritual experience, and which creates understanding. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean alignment, that suddenly people's minds are changed about their faith,
Sure.
but it creates understanding, which can only lead to a positive place. It can't lead to a bad place.
Oh my goodness, only good came out of it. Our students were, they were beaming that night. We went back and we debriefed for an hour and a half, and when the whole trip was done, that was their highlight.
I could see why, and I'm sitting here almost giddy thinking about the prospect of that happening, and I think probably it dispels a certain, maybe a somewhat unconscious view, or maybe for some people it's a overt sense that with people who practice religion, whether it be Islam, whether it be Christianity, that there's a certain arrogance that comes along with it that would eliminate the possibility of a gathering such as what you just described. But instead of arrogance, it's just basically saying, hey, it shows confidence, saying we can walk into any scenario, have a conversation, let there be a level of connection human to human, and if we don't agree on certain things, that's okay. At least now maybe you understand me and I understand you.
I think the word you said is very interesting, a confidence.
Yes.
Why would somebody go into a mosque or any other religious faith, present their view, and have questions fired at them for an hour?
Right.
It's because they're confident that their position is true.
Right.
One of the things I do in churches is I do this atheist role play. I call it an atheist encounter, where they know I'm a Christian.
Right.
I put glasses on, I go into atheist mode, and I'll give an atheist viewpoint 5 or 6 minutes, and then I take questions from the audience. And then I just kind of shoot it down one by one. And always the frustration brews about 25, 30 minutes into it. I've been called names, I've been personally attacked. And then I'll stop and I'll say, before we answer some of these questions, I want to know, how did you treat me? And I'm telling you, it's like people go, oh, shoot.
Right.
I didn't even realize that. I was trying to win you in an argument. I was trying to show that you were wrong. I was trying to show how smart I am. I wasn't interested in learning and really treating you in love as a human being. And then I'll ask the audience, and I've thought about this. I've done this, I don't know if I'd say hundreds of times, but dozens and dozens of times to youth pastors, to parents, to school teachers, to junior high students, stadiums of 6,000 to 12 students. And consistently, students get defensive, Christians get defensive, angry, and sometimes even hostile a little bit. Why? You know why? Because we don't know what we believe and why. We don't have the confidence that it's really true.
Right.
So when someone starts pressing us and asking us tough questions, how do you know the Bible's true? Why does God allow evil? Can't all religions be true? What about evolution? If we haven't thought about it and someone presses us, it's human instinct to get defensive.
Right.
But Jesus said, love God with your heart and with your soul and with your mind. Peter said, be ready with an answer. When we take the time to know as Christians what we believe and why we believe it, it builds tremendous confidence and a willingness to engage people lovingly and thoughtfully with very different views than our own.
So non-believers are not the enemy, which is probably, I think, the mindset. And it's interesting because when I really think about what you're saying relative to the confidence, being the thing that allows you to lighten up and walk into a circumstance and just feel I'm here and I have the confidence to be able to have this communication, not worried that somehow it might rock my world or destabilize my experience of life, but rather that there's a way maybe to gain greater understanding here. I would say that from people outside looking in, I think if they were to be asked, the non-Christian world, would Christians, do they feel like non-believers are the enemy and that that they can't be interacted with? It's really not that way.
I don't think it's just Christians. I think we live in a divisive, argumentative culture.
Yeah.
It's us versus them. And I think there's reasons for this. One reason is I think there's a lot of brokenness and hurt in relationships. We've seen suicide and depression rising. Rick Warren famously said, hurt people hurt people. So whatever your faith is or no faith, if there's emotional and relational brokenness, then it's much easier to argue with someone and dehumanize them than to listen to them and treat them humanely. I think we also just live in a culture that's so rushed. We're so busy and we're so distracted. And we also are so afraid of political correctness that what if I say the wrong thing? I'm going to get attacked and shamed. Right. So people are afraid in relationship publicly to say stuff. So they go online under a pseudonym, just start attacking people because they have no natural outlet for it. So I found just learning to listen, learning to know what we believe, having conversations, trying to have sympathy and thinking, okay, people with different belief systems aren't the enemy. In fact, they might be right. And if they're right, I should believe it. I mean, I grew up in a Christian home, and my father, he's been in ministry over 50 years, and he's written over 150 books.
Wow.
He's probably spoken to more young people live than anybody in history. Wow. Done 250 debates. I only mention this because I went through a period of doubt in my life where I had a lot of questions. And I started thinking, all right, I know my parents mean well, but what if I was raised in a different family? If I was raised in a Muslim family, would I just be a Muslim? How do I really know the Bible's true? How do I really know Jesus rose from the grave? And it was kind of an existential, mild crisis. I don't want to overstate it for me. And I remember sitting down with my dad, not knowing how he's going to respond. He spent his whole life defending and proclaiming the truth of Christianity. His son's like, I don't know if I buy this. So I sat down and said, Dad, I want to tell you something. I want to know what's true, but I don't know that I'm convinced Christianity's true. I felt like I had to be honest with him. He looks at me, he goes, son, I think that's great. And I remember thinking, Dad, did you hear anything that I just said? He goes, look, I didn't raise you to just believe something because I told you. I raised you to follow after truth and to seek after truth. And wherever it leads you, embrace it. He said, I'm convinced if you really seek after truth, you'll end up or continue believing in Jesus because Jesus is the truth. But follow truth, even if you don't like it, even if it's uncomfortable. Seek after truth. That's something my dad has just hammered into me. And he always tells me, even in politics, read both sides before you make up your mind. Right. And I think the only reason we look at people as enemies, the only reason we don't listen more and we get so angry is because we hear one side of the argument. We think everybody else is stupid. Well, if you only look at one side, then of course everyone else seems stupid. Right. But if you read both sides, if you take the time to listen to people, at least understand where they're coming from, then it's much harder to be in this argumentative, he's the enemy, rather than just loving people in the way that Jesus said we're supposed to love people.
Well, and there's so much, as you're citing, the level of acrimony in the world and polarization is unprecedented, at least in my lifetime, I think. And I think everything you just said speaks to the root of that and why that exists. So and I think the solution is, basically creating understanding. And I think sometimes it's the inward look, right? Saying, okay, where am I? And I think it's an amazing reflection, given that you're born in a Christian household. Your father, is such a large figure in the Christian community, and that you would still ask the question. And this is really, I think, a startling question. What if I was born in a Muslim household? What might have happened? And all of a sudden you can start to say, okay, and there are people who are. And now how should I relate to them? And I just think that that's an amazing lens to look through that would cause pause for anybody. Because maybe the Muslim, if they said, what if I was born in a Christian household? You see? It really, I think everybody can ask that question. I think that's one of the most amazing soul-searching questions I've heard. So I just wanted to point that out.
Well, at least minimally, it can help us be sympathetic to people who see the world differently and be a little bit more self-critical about what we believe and why we believe it.
So now, you're a father, 3 children, and you talked about your experience growing up as the son. Now, what's it like for you being the father?
That's a great question. I love being a dad, have 3 kids, and spending time with my kids is, up there with my wife, kind of my pride and joy, some of the most fun things I do. And, we live in a world where there's a lot of different beliefs, and obviously I want my kids to be Christians. I want to embrace the belief system that we have. I'd be lying if I said differently.
Right.
But I also know that my kids need to grow up and make some decisions for themselves. I can pray for them. I can guide them. I can hopefully model for them what it means to be a Christian. And at some point, they're going to have to decide what they believe and go for it.
Right.
But, they know I'm going to love them no matter what. So I just try to, when we go on these trips I've been describing, we take my son with me. My daughter was there when we were at the mosque. I wanted her to meet some people who are Muslims and just have a cross-cultural experience, and not just view them through the lens of which, maybe we see on TV in a movie or the news or something like that. So I try to guide my kids, try to have conversations with them, pray for them. It's fun to be a dad. Yeah. But, when it's all said and done, they're going to have to make some decisions about their life spiritually, and I can't make those decisions for them.
Thanks so much for joining us for this interview, for taking this Christ Revealed journey with us. Remember, if you haven't already, subscribe. That way you'll get notified about all the new content that's coming down the road. Comment. People want to hear from you, and then maybe you'll encourage somebody else to make a comment. If you did like it so other people know that's something good for them to watch. And finally, share this. Send links to other people that you know and care about. Cost you nothing but maybe a few seconds of your time, but might have a massive impact on their life. Anyway, really excited to be able to share this information with you. Thanks for tuning in.